A lot of clean energy companies, especially in renewable energy, were dependent on things like the production tax credit, the investment tax credit for solar, for wind, that were traditionally things that, because of pressure from the oil and gas industry primarily, things that expired on an annual basis, or maybe they'd get extended for 2 years or maybe 3 years, you know, when we have oil and gas subsidies that have been around for over a century. It's mighty hard to plan a business and make investments, millions of dollars in investments, when you only have the visibility around that for a year or 2 years.
Yep.
You know, you and I don't buy a house if we only know where we're going to be for a year. So one of the biggest things that the IRA did was solidify those credits for 10 years. So finally, businesses got some visibility and could start investing. And guess
certainty. They could be assured that those credits would be in place for an extended period of time. Businesses love certainty.
Exactly. And uncertainty is the worst thing there is for business. So,
yeah.
So finally, people could start investing in things like solar panel factories. And with the direction that the electric vehicle market was going, and the certainty around not just tax credits for buying electric vehicles, but for investing in the factories to build those electric vehicles, they could start making investment. And guess what? Since the IRA was passed, we have now more than 50 battery factories coming out of the ground in America. We have more than 60 solar panel factories or solar panel related factories coming out of the ground in America. Before then, we had very few, if any. And yet we're supposed to compete with a country like China that now has 90% of the solar industry, has 85% of the battery industry. And we're worried about that, but we're not going to invest in those things. Finally, the IRA, through those tax credits and through the extension of those tax credits, gave companies the impetus to start investing in these things and getting us in the game that we frankly didn't have a dog in the fight with previously.
What are the policies that have changed since Trump took office that is creating essentially the turmoil and putting a bunch of projects into question?
There's so much of the economy, I think, Pete, and maybe society as a whole these days, it's the general chaos. It's the market uncertainty. And as we've seen in our 401ks and in the stock market recently, in reaction to tariffs on, tariffs off, tariffs maybe, there's nothing worse than uncertainty to roil stock markets and our economy in general. Look, businesses depend on market clarity to make decisions. And right now what we're getting out of Washington is about as clear as a blizzard at midnight. And dead center in this is, yes, tariffs are one thing, but looming just as large is tax policy. Congress is right now inching toward repealing clean energy tax policies that businesses were counting on to be in place for 10 years. And we're investing because they thought those were going to be in place for 10 years. And now in the weeks and the months ahead, Congress is going to consider repealing those. And if they do, it's going to throw even more market uncertainty into our economy. Congress is going to have to decide what they're going to do with them in the next several months to meet the budget constraints that are being created to pay for some of the policies that the president wants to see happen. My organization, E2, has been tracking clean energy projects for over 3 years now. And what we've seen in the past few months is a precipitous and worrisome decline in the number of investments that are coming to America and an increase in cancellations. What we've seen in the past few months is a precipitous and worrisome decline in the number of investments that are coming to America and an increase in cancellations. We've seen more than $6 billion worth of projects canceled, clean energy projects canceled since January. Dozens of factories that are being delayed or scaled back. And that's not hurting folks in Washington, D.C., although Washington, D.C. has had a lot of pain lately too, of course, but this is hurting working class people in rural Georgia and Kentucky and Tennessee and Michigan, where these projects were planned and local communities were counting on them and expecting them to come.
Yeah, and these are in places where a lot of people felt left behind by globalization.
Yeah.
And clean energy manufacturing and development was one of the great strategies to give them new opportunities, to revitalize these communities and to put thousands of people back to work. And it seems like that's all at risk.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these places were frankly areas that were passed over by previous economic transitions, whether it was the dot-com boom or the computer age, or even before then, the advent of oil and gas for that matter. Look, we all want more manufacturing in America. We want America to be more competitive with China and every other country that's leading the world in a lot of these areas right now. And if we roll these tax policies back and we throw more uncertainty into the marketplace, that's not going to happen. And lawmakers need to understand that. Fortunately, they're starting to. We saw just last week 4 Republican senators sign a letter saying we can't just cut these tax credits willy-nilly. We can't just kill this stuff because it's creating too many jobs, bringing too many investments to America. Before that, we had 21 House Republicans sign a letter saying essentially the same thing. Don't kill this policy because it'll kill jobs and investments in my state and my district. So they're starting to understand the message. They're starting to understand what's at risk. And we just got to make sure that they don't go backward with a call from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or something like that.